Ethan came home late that night, tired, hungry, and half asleep. It had been another long shift at the cargo port, cold wind biting his face as he walked through the empty streets. He unlocked his small house and stepped inside, expecting darkness, silence, and maybe the sound of the old fridge humming, but instead a warm yellow light spilled from the kitchen doorway. He froze. The house should have been empty. He lived alone, no guests, no roommates, no family nearby. The smell hit him next. Not the burnt toast smell he was used to, but something sweet, metallic, and sharp like rain mixed with honey. It made his stomach growl, yet his chest tighten with unease. He took a slow step forward. The floor creaked softly under his boots. He listened, and a faint sizzling sound. A spoon tapping against a pan. Someone was really cooking. His first thought was maybe a burglar. But what kind of thief cooks dinner? He picked up the nearest thing he could use as a weapon, a wrench lying on the counter from his earlier repair work. Ethan reached the kitchen doorway and peeked inside. His breath caught in his throat. A figure stood with her back to him, tall, slender, and glowing faintly in the light. Her hair wasn't hair at all. It shimmered like threads of silver glass, flowing as if underwater. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, with blue veins of light running beneath the surface. For a second he thought he was dreaming. Maybe he had fallen asleep on the bus and this was some weird dream about science fiction movies he liked. But then the figure turned and the dream shattered into reality. She looked straight at him. Her eyes were huge and silver with no pupils, reflecting every bit of light in the room. She held a wooden spoon like it was a precious relic. Steam rose behind her from a pot on the stove. "You came home," she said in broken English, her voice soft but echoing strangely. As if two tones spoke at once, Ethan almost dropped the wrench. Who are you?" he managed to whisper. She blinked slowly, tilting her head like a curious cat. "Hungry?" she asked, pointing at the table. He noticed now my 2 plates set neatly. One of them had his old cracked mug beside it. The other had a shimmering glass he didn't own. The food on the plate glowed faintly blue, steaming and giving off that strange smell again. "What is this?" Ethan asked. Trying to sound brave. "Food," she said simply, smiling in a way that made the air around her seem warmer. "I made for you." He took a cautious step closer. The smell was stronger now, not unpleasant but alien, like electricity mixed with sugar. "How did you get in here?" he asked. The door was locked. Her silver eyes dimmed a little. "Open," she said, pointing at the small window above the sink. The glass was half shattered, apparently melted at the edges. Not broken by force, but dissolved. Ethan's mind raced. She wasn't human. That much was obvious, but she didn't look like a threat either. More like someone lost, confused, and trying to be kind. "What are you?" he asked softly. She looked down, then placed a hand on her chest. "Lyra," she said. "I fell. Ethan repeated. "From where?" She hesitated, searching for words. "From up," she said finally, and pointed toward the ceiling. "Sky broke. I came down." Ethan blinked, his mind flipping through all the possibilities. Meteor crash, hallucination, government experiment. But her voice had a tone of truth that pierced right through his disbelief. He glanced at the food again. The color was wrong, but the texture looked almost normal, like stew. His stomach growled again, reminding him he hadn't eaten all day. Lyra smiled gently, hearing it. "Taste," she said, lifting the spoon toward him. I don't know if I should," Ethan muttered. "You could be dangerous." Her expression softened with hurt. "No danger," she said, shaking her head. "You helped?" "So I helped?" Ethan asked, frowning.
"When," she pointed to the front yard, "you leave light on." He remembered the porch light. He always kept it on at night for stray cats.
Maybe that tiny act of kindness had drawn her in. Maybe she had thought the light meant safety. Ethan sighed, lowering the wrench. "All right," he said finally, taking the spoon. The glowing stew shimmered faintly in the dim light. He took a careful sip, expecting the worst. The taste was impossible to describe. It was like warm sunlight mixed with mint and metal. Strange, but somehow good. It spread warmth through his chest. Melting the day's exhaustion, he looked up, startled. "This is actually good." Lyra's smile widened, her eyes brightening like stars. "See," she said proudly, "human eat." "Slive," Ethan let out a shaky laugh, sitting down slowly. "Okay, Lyra," he said. "You can stay tonight, but tomorrow we'll figure out whatever this is." Lyra nodded once, her glowing hair swaying gently. "Tomorrow, Maybe safe, she whispered almost to herself outside. Thunder rolled across the sky. A blue flash lit the cloud, something moving fast. Too controlled to be lightning, Lyra flinched, her silver eyes flicking toward the window. Ethan noticed. What was that? She didn't answer. Only whispered, "They found me." The lights faded. Silence returned, and the only sound left was the gentle bubbling of the pot on the stove. Ethan didn't understand what kind of danger she meant or who they were, but deep down, something told him that this night had changed everything. The hungry man who just wanted dinner had instead opened his door to the universe, and the universe had stepped into his kitchen wearing a smile. Morning sunlight crept through the broken window, scattering soft gold across the kitchen table. Ethan blinked awake on the couch, the smell of something sweet and strange still hanging in the air. For a moment he thought last night had been a dream, but then he saw her again, Lyra, sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by glowing fragments of metal and light. She wasn't cooking now, she was repairing something in a small, disc-shaped object floating in front of her. Her long silver hair shimmered with every movement. Her fingers moved fast, almost too fast, weaving threads of blue energy between broken circuits. Ethan sat up slowly. "You're still here," he said, his voice rough. Lyra looked up with that same calm expression. "Still here," she repeated softly. "You sleep long." He rubbed his eyes, trying to process everything. "So you really are. Not from here?" Lyra tilted her head slightly as if trying to translate the question. "Not from this world," she said finally, tapping her chest. "I come from the Arcus system, far up." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Yeah, I figured," he said, glancing at the glowing tech. "That's not from any store I know." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "I crashed. My ship broke in your sky." Her tone carried something more than sadness. It was guilt, deep and heavy. "What happened?" Ethan asked. Walking closer, she hesitated, then gestured toward a small blue shard on the floor. It pulsed faintly like a living heart. "This is what they want," she whispered. "They hunt me for it." Ethan crouched to look closer. "Who's they?" Lyra's silver eyes darkened. "The guild, my people," she said. "They want to use it to bend space, to control stars." "I stole it so they cannot," Ethan frowned. "So you're saying your own people are after you?" "Yes," she said simply. "Because I refuse to help them destroy worlds." He didn't know what to say. It sounded insane, yet every word from her seemed to carry truth, not fantasy. He noticed how her voice trembled slightly when she spoke, and how carefully she kept the blue shard away from the sunlight, wrapping it in a cloth like it was alive. "So what are you going to do now?" he asked. "You can't exactly walk around town glowing like that." She looked at him with quiet hope. "Hide until I fix my beacon," she said, holding up the small floating disc. "Then I can call." "Safe people." "Safe people," Ethan echoed. "Like friends," she nodded. "Not all in the stars are bad. Some still remember mercy." Her words struck something deep in him. He had heard similar things about humanity. People who forgot mercy, who chased power, who hurt others for gain. And here was someone from another world, saying the same about her kind. Ethan sighed. "All right, Lyra, you can stay here for a while," he said. "But no more melting my windows." Lyra tilted her head again, confused, then laughed. A soft musical sound that filled the whole room with warmth. "Deal," she said, imitating the human word. She spent the day exploring his small house with childlike curiosity, touching the refrigerator, tapping the television, even staring at the light switch like it was magic. Ethan found himself smiling despite everything. It was strange how natural it felt to have her there, as if she belonged somehow when evening came. He noticed her standing by the window, watching the sky. Her silver eyes reflected the fading light. "You miss your home," he said quietly. She nodded, "Yes. But home not same anymore," she whispered. "They took it, changed it. Now only stars listen." Ethan didn't fully understand, but he saw the pain in her voice. He wanted to comfort her, but words felt too small. So he just stood beside her, watching the sky turn from blue to dark. A faint hum echoed outside. Deep and rhythmic, Lyra stiffened instantly. "Drones," she whispered. "They found my signal." Ethan's heart pounded. He looked out but saw nothing yet, only distant flashes above the tree line. "What do we do?" Lyra grabbed his wrist, pulling him away from the window. "Hide," she said, her calm voice now shaking. "If they see you, they erase memory, erase all." "Erase," he repeated. Shocked. You mean, she nodded. They erase minds of those who see us. Humans not allowed to know. The thought sent chills down his spine. This was no longer about just helping someone lost. It was about survival. Both hers and his. They ran to the basement. Lyra clutching the blue shard close to her chest, the sound of the drones grew louder. A mechanical hum like a swarm of angry bees circling above. Ethan's heart raced. He could feel her trembling beside him. Yet she looked at him with fierce determination. "I will not let them take me again," she whispered. "I promised the stars I would protect this." He stared at her, this glowing, fragile being hiding in his dusty basement, and realized she wasn't a monster, not an invader, but someone who had risked everything for something bigger than herself. As the lights of the drones flashed through the cracks of the basement window, Ethan whispered, "Then I'll protect you too." Lyra turned toward him slowly, her eyes shining with disbelief. "Why?" she asked softly. Ethan managed a small smile. "Because you cooked in my kitchen," he said quietly, "and because it feels like the right thing to do." Outside, the sky roared again as the drones passed overhead. The walls shook slightly and Lyra's hand tightened around his. For the first time since she fell from the stars, she didn't feel alone, and for the first time in his life, Ethan realized that maybe humanity's kindness wasn't small. Maybe it was powerful enough to change worlds. The night sky above Ethan's house was no longer quiet. It pulsed with strange blue lights that moved like living stars. Sweeping slowly across the forest, the sound was faint at first. A low mechanical hum. Rhythmic and cold, Lyra pressed herself against the wall, her silver eyes glowing with fear. "They are near," she whispered, her voice trembling but controlled. "They follow heat and light. They smell energy." Ethan peeked through the blinds. A line of hovering shapes glided above the tree line. Sleek black drones with spinning rings of light beneath them, scanning the ground like predators searching for prey. His heart hammered in his chest. "Those are your people's machines," he muttered. "Aren't they?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Hunters," she said. "They erase evidence of me. They erase witnesses, too." Ethan's throat went dry. He never imagined his quiet, boring life could turn into something straight out of a sci-fi nightmare. The woman in his kitchen was not just an alien. She was a fugitive from an empire that erased lives to keep its secrets. He looked at her, trying to think. "We need to hide." "Basement again?" Lyra shook her head sharply. "No, they detect metal, power lines. We must cut energy." "Cut signals." Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed the main breaker and flipped it down. The house went black instantly. Only the soft blue light from Lyra's skin remained, flickering faintly like moonlight underwater. "Now they can't see us," she whispered, pressing her palm to the floor. Her fingertips glowed faintly as if she could feel vibrations through the ground. "But they hear emotions." "Strong energy of fear," Ethan frowned. "They hear emotions," she nodded. "You humans. You burn bright when afraid," he gave a nervous laugh. "Great. So we just need to stop being terrified." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Even in danger." "Try," she said softly. The hum grew louder outside. A bright beam of blue light passed over the house, sweeping slowly across the roof. Lyra's hand clenched around the glowing shard hidden beneath her sleeve. Ethan could see it pulse with every beat of her heart, he whispered. "That crystal. It's what they're tracking." "Isn't it?" "Yes," she breathed. "It calls to them." "Even through walls," Ethan thought fast. "Then we have to move it away." Lyra stared at him in shock. "If I separate from it, I die," she said. "It links to my core, to my pulse." He hesitated, realizing what she meant. "Then we'll protect it together," he said firmly. For a moment their eyes met in the dark. Human and alien, two beings who should never have crossed paths. Yet somehow, in that silence, they understood each other. Then the window shattered, a drone broke through, its spinning core glowing like lightning. Ethan fell backward as a thin beam sliced through his table, sending splinters flying. Lyra jumped in front of him, raising her hand. A wave of blue energy burst from her palm. The drone stopped midair, shaking violently before exploding into sparks that rained across the room. The shock wave threw Ethan to the floor, his ears ringing. When the smoke cleared, he saw Lyra kneeling, trembling, her glow flickering weakly. "You okay?" he asked, crawling to her side. She nodded faintly. "Too much energy. I am weak now." Outside more drones appeared, 3, maybe 4. Their lights cutting through the dark like angry eyes. Ethan looked at the destroyed window, then at Lyra. "We can't stay here." He grabbed her arm gently. "Can you run?" "Yes," she said, barely above a whisper. "But where?" Ethan's eyes darted toward the forest behind his house. "The old storm shelter," he said quickly. "It's underground, no power lines. No signal." Lyra followed him, limping slightly but moving fast. The forest was pitch dark except for the faint light glowing from her body. The air was cold and filled with the metallic scent of ozone. Behind them, the drones buzzed louder, scanning through the trees. They reached the storm shelter, a rusted metal door half buried under vines. Ethan yanked it open, motioning her inside. She ducked down, clutching the glowing shard close to her chest. Ethan jumped in after her and shut the door just as the lights passed over. Inside, the space was small, damp, and silent. Ethan could hear only their breathing. Lyra sat curled against the wall, whispering something in her language. Soft, melodic, like a prayer. "What are you saying?" Ethan asked quietly. She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting faint tears. "I ask stars to forgive me," she said, "for bringing war to your home." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't bring it, they did," he said firmly. "And I'm not letting them take you." Lyra blinked, surprised. "You would fight." "For me?" He gave a half smile. "Well, you cooked for me first," he said, trying to lighten the air. She laughed weakly, the sound barely more than a breath, but it was real. Her glow dimmed slowly, settling into a soft pulse outside. The drones circled, then moved away, unable to find their target. For now, they were safe. Ethan leaned against the cold wall, exhausted. Staring at the glowing girl beside him, he realized something strange. For the first time in years, he didn't feel lonely anymore. Lyra looked at him with quiet gratitude. "Human heart," she murmured, always louder than fear. And somewhere in the distance, the stars above seemed to shimmer in agreement, as if they too were listening to this unlikely friendship forming in the dark shelter of Earth. The morning after the drone attack, the forest around Ethan's house felt hauntingly silent. Not even the birds dared to sing. Dew clung to every leaf like tiny glass beads. The air smelled of burnt metal and damp earth. Ethan stood outside the storm shelter, keeping watch while Lyra rested inside. Her glow was faint now, more like the soft shimmer of moonlight than the bright aura he had seen before. He still couldn't believe it all less than 2 days ago. His biggest problem had been an empty fridge. Now he was hiding an alien fugitive from an interstellar empire. He stared down at the small blue shard Lyra called the core, safely wrapped in a piece of his old blanket. Even when covered, it pulsed like a living thing, sending faint vibrations through his fingers. When Lyra woke, she looked weak but calm. "It saved us," she whispered, glancing at the core. "It always does." Ethan crouched beside her. "You need to tell me what it really is," he said softly. "You said it's alive. What does that mean?" Lyra stared at the core as if afraid to touch it. "It is a piece of a dying star," she said finally. "A fragment that holds the memory of its light. My people found it drifting between galaxies. They learned to use it, to bend time and gravity, to destroy or rebuild worlds." Ethan frowned. "So, it's like a weapon." Lyra shook her head slowly. "It was never made to harm. It was made to protect life. But power always tempts those who forget compassion." Her silver eyes flickered with sorrow. "The Guild wanted to turn it into a weapon, to make suns collapse on command. I was one of the scientists assigned to test it. But when I saw what they planned to do, I took it and ran." Ethan sat beside her, trying to understand. "So you betrayed your own people to save something sacred?" She nodded. "I did not want another world to burn." He looked at the core again, its blue light softly illuminating the dark shelter. "It reacts to you," he said, "like it knows you." Lyra smiled faintly. "It does. It chooses who carries it. It feeds on emotion and courage, kindness. Sacrifice." Ethan blinked. "Wait, you're saying this thing feels?" "Yes," she whispered. "It feels the heart that holds it." Silence filled the shelter. Ethan looked at her, realizing now how heavy her burden truly was. She wasn't just hiding from danger. She was protecting the universe from her own kind. He finally said, "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Lyra looked at him in surprise. "You cannot fight them," she said gently. "They command entire fleets." "Maybe," he said with a shrug. "But they don't know Earth, they don't know me." Lyra tilted her head. "Curious, you are strange, Ethan," she said softly. "Most humans would run, you stay." He smiled. "Maybe because you made me dinner first." Her laughter returned, soft, musical, the kind that made even the air feel lighter. Later that day, Ethan helped her recharge by connecting a small generator to her floating device. The energy sparked faintly, causing the shelter to glow with ribbons of blue light. "Your machines." "They're beautiful," he said quietly, watching the arcs dance. Lyra nodded. "They were built from harmony, not war," she said. "Long ago we lived with light, not under it." Ethan could see her pain, not just physical, but the ache of someone who had lost her entire world. "You miss your people," he said gently. She shook her head. "No, I miss who they used to be." For a while neither spoke. The faint hum of the generator was the only sound. Then Lyra turned toward him, her eyes bright again. "Ethan, the core responded to you last night," she said. "When you grabbed my hand, it pulsed stronger." He blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means it trusts you," she said softly. "That never happens to another species." Ethan laughed nervously. "So you're saying your magical space rock likes me?" Lyra smiled. "It sees your heart." He didn't know how to respond. A strange warmth filled his chest, not from the core, but from her words. As night fell, they sat outside under the stars. Hidden in the shadows of the trees, the sky was clear again. Full of silver light, Lyra looked up, her expression distant. "They will come again," she said, "stronger this time." Ethan looked at her. "Then we'll be ready." Lyra turned toward him. "Why do you care so much?" she asked. "You could hand me to them and they would leave you alone." Ethan gazed at her, his eyes steady. "Because you showed me what kind of man I want to be," he said. "Someone who stands for what's right, even when it's not easy." Her silver eyes softened. "That is rare, even among the stars." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint hum of the core. Its light shimmered between them like a heartbeat shared by two worlds. And for the first time since her fall, Lyra felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The night fell heavier than before, thick clouds covering the stars. The air carried a strange vibration, faint, but enough to make the window glass tremble. Ethan and Lyra sat in silence, both sensing it before any sound reached them. Lyra's eyes snapped open, glowing faint silver. "They're close," she whispered. "Too close." Ethan grabbed the core, now pulsing wildly like a panicked heartbeat. "We can run to the forest," he said quickly. "We've done it before." Lyra shook her head. "No use," she said quietly. "They found my beacon." Before Ethan could ask how, the sky outside erupted in light. A blinding column of blue energy struck the ground not far from the house. The shockwave hit like thunder, shaking the walls and knocking books off the shelves. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the back door. "Move!" he shouted outside. The world glowed in eerie blue. A large circular craft hovered silently above the trees. Smooth, mirror black metal with rotating silver rings that hummed like a giant heart. Smaller drones poured from its underside, scanning the area with blinding beams. Lyra stopped suddenly, her eyes wide. "It's them," she whispered. "The guild enforcers." Ethan turned to her. "Then we fight," he said, grabbing the metal pipe he had used as a weapon before. Lyra looked at him sadly. "You cannot fight machines built to erase stars." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Maybe not, but I can stall them." He ran toward the shed, smashing open the door and grabbing an old flare gun. The bright red light shot into the air, bursting against the dark clouds, not as a signal for help, but as a distraction. The drones turned toward it, scanning wildly. Lyra took the chance to hide behind the truck, clutching the glowing core close to her chest. But the moment the light faded, a beam of white light locked onto her from above. Ethan saw it happen, saw her freeze as the beam lifted her slowly off the ground. "Lyra!" he shouted, running toward her. "Stay back!" She screamed, her voice echoing with fear and desperation. "They will erase you!" He ignored her, sprinting through the grass as energy sparks burned around his feet. He jumped, grabbing her arm. The light pulled harder, lifting both of them into the air. Lyra's silver hair flowed like liquid fire. "Let go, Ethan!" she cried. "They'll take you too." "Not without you," he yelled. The beam intensified, forcing him to release her as pain surged through his body. He fell hard to the ground, the air knocked from his lungs. When he looked up, she was gone. Swallowed by the ship's glow, the craft ascended slowly, its engines humming with an unearthly rhythm. Then in a burst of light, it vanished into the clouds. Leaving the forest in silence, Ethan lay there for a long time, Staring at the empty sky, rain began to fall, cold, heavy drops soaking his shirt. He dragged himself back to the house, his mind blank. Inside, the smell of burned wood filled the air. The kitchen, the same place where she had first stood cooking for him, was half destroyed. The pot she had used still sat on the stove, cracked and cold on the floor. Beneath the broken table, something glowed faintly. Ethan crawled closer and found it. The small blue core. Pulsing weakly, abandoned, he lifted it carefully, his hands shaking. "You dropped this, Lyra," he whispered, voice cracking. "You said it was your life." The core flickered once, almost like it recognized his voice. Then steadied. For the next hours, Ethan sat in silence. The house dark except for the glow in his palms. Every memory played through his mind. Her laugh. Her voice, the way she had looked at the stars. The way she had said, "You burn bright when afraid." He finally stood, determination burning in his eyes. "They took you," he muttered, "but I'm not giving up." He found her damaged device on the floor, half melted, still humming with alien symbols. He placed the core inside. And for a brief second the screen lit up, showing coordinates, distant, far beyond Earth. Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess that's where I'm going," he said. Outside, the rain washed away the ashes. The forest was quiet again, but not empty. The night sky pulsed faintly with light, as if the stars themselves were watching, and somewhere beyond that endless black horizon, Lyra sat inside a cell of silver light, clutching her broken wrist where Ethan had grabbed her, whispering into the dark, "He will come." The guards outside didn't understand her words, but the stars did. Rain poured for 3 days straight, turning the forest into rivers of mud. The world outside Ethan's window looked lifeless, but inside, his house glowed faint blue from the crystal core resting on the table. It pulsed like a heart, slow and steady as if waiting. Ethan hadn't slept. He had spent hours studying the alien symbols flickering across Lyra's broken device, piecing together fragments of her technology. Every spark of light, every pulse of the crystal felt like her, like she was still there guiding him. He whispered softly, "You said it feels the heart that holds it." His fingers brushed the surface of the core, and for a moment it responded, glowing brighter. The light spread through the device, showing faint holographic patterns. Alien stars in a map. He stared at it. It was a route, a signal path leading to a point far beyond Earth's orbit. "That's where they took you," he said under his breath. "And that's where I'm coming." For the next few nights, Ethan worked nonstop, using what little he had, old satellite parts, a generator, metal scraps, building something that could send him up there. He wasn't a scientist, not an engineer, but he was human, stubborn, desperate, and driven by something stronger than logic. The core glowed brighter each time he spoke to it, as if encouraging him. Sometimes he even felt warmth in his chest when he touched it, like her voice whispering in his thoughts. "Courage, Ethan. Courage is light." By the 5th day, the rain stopped. The clouds parted, revealing the stars. Ethan stepped outside and stared at the sky. "All right, Lyra," he whispered. "Let's see what this human heart can really do." He powered the generator. The small craft he had built, half truck, half rocket, wrapped in old solar panels, shook violently. The crystal core pulsed faster, synchronizing with his heartbeat. Blue light wrapped around the engine. Lifting it slightly from the ground, Ethan gripped the controls. Sweat on his palms. "If you can hear me." "Hang on," he muttered. Then the light expanded. The ground disappeared beneath him. The forest turned into streaks of green and blue, and the next moment he was surrounded by stars. In the cold void of space, his improvised craft drifted toward the massive black vessel that had taken Lyra. Its surface glimmered like obsidian glass, surrounded by smaller drones moving in perfect patterns. Ethan's heart pounded. He wasn't supposed to be here. But fear didn't matter anymore. He activated the stolen beacon signal Lyra had once used. The ship reacted immediately, pulling his craft in with a tractor beam. The inside was enormous, filled with endless corridors of silver light and echoing mechanical sounds. Ethan moved quietly, clutching the glowing core close to his chest. The moment he stepped inside, alarms began to pulse. A robotic voice spoke through the walls. "Unauthorized life form detected. Human signature. Erase protocol initiated." Ethan smirked. "Come erase this," he muttered, and pressed his hand against the core. It responded instantly, a surge of blue energy spreading across the floor like lightning. The lights flickered, drones dropped from the ceiling. Their systems shorted, The core was amplifying his emotions, his anger, his determination, turning them into raw power. He followed the strongest energy signal down a corridor lined with glowing tubes, and at the end, through a glass wall, he saw her. Lyra, suspended in midair, wrapped in silver restraints, her glow dimmed to almost nothing. Her eyes fluttered open the moment she sensed him. "Ethan," she whispered. He ran to the control panel, slamming his hand against it. "Hang on, I'm getting you out." The machines around her roared to life. Responding to his interference, a tall metallic figure appeared from the shadows. An enforcer, its voice deep and cold. "You are not permitted to exist here." "Human," Ethan looked up, defiant. "Yeah, I've heard that before." The enforcer raised a glowing weapon. But before it could fire, Ethan pressed the core to his chest. "You wanted this power, right?" he shouted. "Then face what it really means." The core flared with light. Blinding and alive, it poured through the room like a living storm, shattering glass, breaking machines. The enforcer staggered back as circuits melted under the surge. Lyra's restraints broke. She fell into his arms, weak but alive. "You came," she whispered. Ethan smiled through the smoke and sparks. "Told you I don't quit easily." She looked at him, tears forming in her silver eyes. "You made it listen to you," she said. "The core, it answered your heart." "Then let's make it finish what we started," he said. Turning toward the ship's power matrix together, they placed the core inside the central reactor. Its blue light spread across every corridor, wiping the control systems clean. The ship trembled, then fell silent, drifting powerless in the void. Lyra looked at him, exhausted but smiling. "You changed everything," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "No, we did, outside." The stars shone brighter. The human and the alien floated in the wreckage of a ship that once belonged to conquerors. But now it was quiet and free, and in that silence, the universe itself seemed to whisper back the lesson both of them had learned, that even the smallest heart could defy the largest empire. The ship was gone now, swallowed by the stars. Its fragments floated silently across the void. Lifeless metal, cold and still, but from within the debris, two lights drifted together, one faintly blue, one warm and human. Ethan's voice echoed inside his helmet. "Calm but tired. You okay, Lyra?" She nodded weakly, her silver hair flowing in zero gravity. "We are alive, thanks to you," she whispered. "The core obeyed you in a way I've never seen." He looked at the glowing fragment still floating between them. "It listened to both of us," he said quietly. "Maybe it finally understood what it was protecting." Lyra smiled faintly. "And what is that?" Ethan's eyes softened. "Life," he said. "All kinds of life." The core pulsed once, as if agreeing, then dimmed, its light folding inward until it was nothing but a faint crystal, resting silently in Lyra's palms. They spent hours drifting until a rescue beacon triggered automatically from the wreckage, guiding a small patrol ship from a neutral alliance. The crew, half human, half alien, looked at the two with wonder. No words needed to understand that something historic had just happened. Days later, they returned to Earth. The world looked peaceful again. Green forests, quiet roads, and the small wooden house standing where it always had. Ethan stepped out of the craft and breathed in the air, feeling the weight of everything lift off his chest. Lyra followed slowly, wearing one of his old shirts, her glow now gentle, human-like. "It's strange," she said. "The stars feel farther than ever. Yet I feel home," he smiled. "That's because you are." They walked inside. The house smelled faintly of burnt wood and rain. The kitchen, their first battlefield and their first connection, still held the cracked pot from the night she arrived. Ethan picked it up, chuckling softly. "Guess this old thing survived everything." Lyra touched the counter, tracing her fingers across the marks left by the drones. "So much started here," she whispered. "Fear, hunger, kindness." He looked at her. "You know, you never did finish telling me what you were cooking that night." She laughed softly. "A memory dish," she said. "Food from my home, but changed to taste like yours," Ethan grinned. "Then maybe it's time you cook it again." She tilted her head playfully. "You still hungry, human?" "Always," he said, smiling. Lyra moved around the kitchen with graceful familiarity, opening cupboards, humming quietly. The soft light from the core, now resting on the shelf, shimmered through the room. Casting patterns across the walls, Ethan watched her, remembering the chaos, the fear, the nights hiding under the earth, and realizing that somehow It had all led back here, back to this warmth. After a while, Lyra placed 2 plates on the table, one glowing faintly blue, one golden and warm. Together, she said. Sitting across from him, Ethan nodded, raising his fork. Together, they ate in silence for a while. The rain starting gently outside somewhere deep in the forest. Faint light flickered, remnants of the ship's power fading slowly into the earth. Lyra looked up suddenly, her expression distant. "Do you think they'll come again?" she asked softly. Ethan thought for a moment. "Maybe," he said. "But this time, we'll be ready," she smiled. "We," she repeated. Liking how the word sounded, he nodded. "Yeah, we, the human who wouldn't give up and the alien who learned to hope again." Lyra's eyes shimmered like the stars she once called home. "You changed me, Ethan," she whispered. "You showed me that even in the smallest corner of the galaxy, humanity shines the brightest." Ethan reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. "And you showed me that not all monsters come from the sky. Some fall from it to teach us what it means to care." The clock ticked softly. The stove hummed and the world outside faded into peace. The same kitchen that had once been a place of confusion was now filled with light. Warm, living light. Lyra glanced toward the window, where the stars twinkled faintly beyond the clouds. "They look different now," she whispered. Ethan followed her gaze. "Yeah," he said softly. "Because now you know one of them belongs to you," she smiled, her glow rising again, casting a halo around them. "No," she said gently. "Now one of them belongs to us." The core pulsed on the counter one last time, as if sealing their words forever. Its light faded slowly, leaving behind only the soft, golden warmth of 2 souls who had defied the stars together. And as the night deepened, the kitchen where everything began became more than a room. It became a memory, a promise, and a quiet corner of the universe where a human heart and a fallen star learned to live as one.